Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sonata Learning Podcast, where we speak to people who are out in the world, making a difference, empowering people with new skills and new ways of working through learning. And with us today are Shannon, Meehan, and Libby Spader from AidTrain. And AidTrain is an organization that helps humanitarian and development nonprofits around the world achieve sustainability, particularly in the way that they work with and manage any funding from the United States government. And so, obviously, if you're in the whole humanitarian development world, you know how critical that is. If you're not, it's actually a very fascinating subject, and I can't wait to talk about it. So, hi, Shannon and Libby. Great to have you here. Where are you both located? And yeah.
So I'm Libby Spader. Hello, everyone. I am located in the great state of Connecticut, specifically Westport, Connecticut.
Hi, everybody. Shannon Meehan. I'm based out of Florida, but most of my work takes part overseas or throughout the United States, helping organizations find the money, and protect U.S. taxpayer funds. So nice to meet you all.
Fantastic. So I'm sure a lot of people, whether you're in the humanitarian world or not, like you hear about, U.S. foreign aid or something, and it's just kind of this nebulous thing. Like, what are they just handing money to governments? Well, sometimes yes, but other times it's, going through various, humanitarian development organizations, either in the United States or organizations overseas. And, but obviously spending the U.S. government's money is maybe different than an organization spending money that they raise through, private donations or that, they got from a billionaire philanthropist. How is it different for a humanitarian organization receiving U.S. government funding versus other humanitarian organizations?
So some of the similarities is that the U.S. government likes to invest and support the mission of nonprofit organizations through their humanitarian work and international development, like billionaires and foundations. The fundamental difference is there are conditions that come with implementing U.S. government money. It's taxpayer money. It's never our money. So it's a tool that government's allowing us to use to fulfill our missions, to save lives, improve lives. And so the government has conditions because the U.S. citizens and taxpayers appropriately demand accountability.
And so actually organizations taking money from the U.S. government, when they spend a certain amount of that, are required to have annual audits. Our job is to help them stay out of trouble, help them keep the money, help them learn empower them to learn how to spend the money using best business practices within the regulations.
Fantastic. So, how could, so imagine, I'm an organization, the U.S. government hands me money to distribute medicine or to help farmers or to, support women entrepreneurs, and I get a grant from the United States. And, how can a well-meaning organization or a well-meaning individual within an organization, find themselves in trouble, I guess?
So typically the first reason that an organization or an individual in an organization gets into trouble is because they just fundamentally don't know. I first started out, I made a major mistake because I was in charge as a deputy director of millions of dollars, but nobody had ever trained me on the federal regulations. So I executed a procurement, having been a former chief of procurement and logistics for a for-profit entity. And so I followed my experience, and my experience got me into a lot of trouble where I was almost fired.
And what was this procurement or this purchase that got you in so much trouble?
So we won a new award from the U.S. government, and we needed a lot of vehicles. They put one vehicle in the budget, but they put a large amount of money. And so my country director was like, Shannon, you could easily find 2 vehicles for $40,000. And I was like, I accept that challenge. And I did. I found incredible 2 4x4s, and we engaged in the procurement. I followed the procurement process, but neither the country director or I had access to the award or the rules. And we learned by sending a great message to headquarters, look what we did. Aren't you proud of us? And they immediately called and said, no, you have violated. You need prior approval. These cars are supposed to be U.S. manufactured. And we were both like, what?
So had you purchased one Cadillac Escalade with power steering and the stereo and the cup holder, you would have been in less trouble than if you bought two stripped down Land Rovers or whatever.
Yeah, I bought two major, what they call ambulance Toyota Land Cruisers that are huge and have all these seating. They were perfect for us operating in Guinea, which was a very complex humanitarian situation. And so my punishment for that huge mistake was I was sent to US government rules and regs training. And now 25 years later, I'm a master trainer.
Since we were speaking about automobiles,
Yeah.
Is it similar to when someone gets a violation when they're driving? I'm told not to use auto metaphors too much, but if someone gets a violation when they're driving and they're sent to school for the don't speeding school where you sit there and you have to like listen to like someone drone on, or how was the experience?
Yeah. Actually, it's very interactive and participatory because the whole goal when you are sent to a US government rules and regs training is that you can figure out how to ask and answer your own compliance questions. You're going to learn how to research the regs. They're going to give you a highlight of what are the most important risk areas that you may confront, such as procurement, timekeeping, other unallowable cost risks. So you learn where the pitfalls are. But the most important thing you learn is that the rules are all online and they're easily accessible. And so if you have a question, you go to your legal agreement and you go to the regulations. And most of the time, if you take the time, you can resolve your problems. But we find in our training, most mistakes are made because people just didn't know. It's like, here's the money, and the organizations just start implementing based upon their experience, which is great. But your experience will often trip you up because you haven't paid attention to the legal agreement or you have no idea the parameters of the regulations. I think sometimes it's also the language we're teaching them. It's like it's like learning a new language. And once you get used to the US government language and the definitions that they use, then participants become easier to implement their awards.
When I introduce it, one of the very first things I ask around the room is when you hear the word equipment, what does that mean to you? Well, you might look at your microphone. I might look at my phone. I might look at, a camera, something else. Well, equipment has very specific meaning for the U.S. government, and there are very specific rules around it. Remember Shannon in that car? The purchase of equipment requires prior approval, and she didn't get it, and she didn't know she needed it. So but once they get that, and we give them quizzes: is this equipment? Is it supplies? So we get them to practice in the room.
And they kind of have to recalibrate themselves, which is what I had to do when I was, quote, punished to attend a training more than 25 years ago, is because I had so much historical experience in procurement from for-profit entities with under unconditional money that I had to recalibrate my thinking. Oh, this is taxpayer money. This is a tool. I have to meet the boundaries. I have to meet the expectations. So we get auditors in our courses. We get a lot of financial managers. We get a lot of procurement people. We get monitoring and evaluation specialists, program implementers, country directors, chief financial officers, CEOs, all kinds of people come there. And everyone, even if they've been through that training, because I just completed one this morning and a woman stayed after and she said, I've done this training at least 5 times. And I can't believe I also again learned something during this week. And I was like, oh, I learn every time I train it. And I train it 4 to 5 times a month.
Are the legal requirements, I guess, for that the U.S. government places, are they particularly onerous or a lot of like gotchas? Is it like when I scroll through like my agreement, like, do you want to use Canadian PayPal? And I have no idea what I agreed to.
Yeah. No, actually they aren't. The federal regulations, to everyone's surprise, are based upon sound business practices. If you could sum up the regs, it's that: don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't hide anything, be transparent, and don't abuse anything. It actually has an enormous amount of freedom. And within these boundaries that the U.S. government has described online that's easily accessible.
I guess like what are some examples of situations you walk people through, and and how does it relate to like, well, this might be your intuition based on your experience, but here's something you got to be mindful of. Like, what are some of those scenarios?
I'll give you an example. Let's say a smallish organization needs to hire someone to come in and manage the sort of convoy of vehicles and this and that. And one of the drivers says, "Oh my gosh, my brother would be fantastic at this. He's really smart. He knows cars. He can fix them if need be, but he can also he can read and write. He can keep a dispatch book. He can manage money." And the question there is one of conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So it does not mean that the organization cannot hire this brother. He may be the perfect person for that job, but they have to go through their procurement procedures. And the driver, he has to pull himself out of any decision making. He has to not be a part of the decision of the organization. And they have to do, whether they look at 2 or 3 people, whatever it is they usually do, they then conduct their complete search. And they may come up with, well, this guy is the best guy, but they document all of that so that there's neither a real nor a perceived conflict of interest. So that's an illustration of how these things can help.
We've been talking about the U.S. government providing money to humanitarian development organizations. And with that money, imposing some, requirements, reasonable requirements, but not to stoke any controversy here, but that there are some trends that this seems to go against in the humanitarian world. One is like unconditional grants. So, Mackenzie Scott, with the Amazon money saying, here, humanitarian organization, I love your work. Take this money, no strings attached, just do what you do. And then the other trend is localization, saying that, power shouldn't live in places like Washington, D.C. or Geneva or London. It should be close to the ground in the countries where, with the local organizations in the countries where these things are being implemented. So is the whole notion of like the U.S. government handing out conditional money to, is that go against the trends of localization and whatnot?
No, because the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, for many years has worked with local organizations. And one of the best examples would be an organization like Mothers to Mothers of South Africa. It was a small, locally led, community-based organization led by women, mothers of children, that were with medical officials in South Africa fighting against how is HIV/AIDS transmitted from the mother to the child. And their organization actually created one of the best protocols for mother-to-child transmission prevention of HIV/AIDS. Mothers to Mothers in the year 2000 was a small, only South Africa-focused NGO. Then came through the Bush administration and at the end of the Clinton administration, and everyone has continued it, the Presidential Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. Mothers to Mothers, because of the infusion of U.S. government money, is now an international sub-Saharan Africa NGO that works in probably more than 50 countries across Africa, responding to people with AIDS, preventing HIV/AIDS throughout the continent of Africa. So that is true localization. And so there's local organizations, when they are ready to receive U.S. government money, the donor, the Center for Disease Control or USAID, understands that it's a step-by-step process and that it's a great infusion of an investment for them to be champions in their areas. Because a South African knows better their problems that need to be resolved than an outsider. And so finally, especially in the last 10 to 14 years, the donor governments have grabbed onto localization, trying to flip the power. It's very difficult to flip power when money is involved because money equals power. However, there is a lot of looking at the development priorities of a country and asking the populations from top to bottom, bottom to top, what is truly needed in Kenya, in Senegal, in the Congo, in Somalia, in Ethiopia, in Zambia, in Thailand, Vietnam, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, etc. Like what is truly needed from the bottom up. And they're working hard and it's struggling because there are conditions. There will always be conditions with taxpayer money.
So, Libby, if I'm an organization and I want to engage with AidTrain to help my team, what's the process? What can my people expect when they show up, and that sort of thing?
Well, we have a number of ways that we engage with organizations. We do client work, which is private client work, which includes what we call operational reviews, reviewing all their policies and procedures, making sure that they put them in line with the compliance that they need to be a funded organization. And then we also teach, and we teach primarily, we love face-to-face. So we have a very robust face-to-face schedule coming up in Washington and all sorts of places this spring. Africa as well. Shannon, I'm sure, can rattle off all the cities we're going to be in.
Yes.
Dar es Salaam, et cetera, et cetera. I'll leave that to her. And then we'll have another robust open training program in the fall. Open means face-to-face. We are hosting and people can come. And we combine our consulting with also training that we design for them specifically.
Okay, well, thank you so much. You've discussed all the great work you do. Now, what if there's anyone in the audience who said, "Hey, how can I reach Shannon and Libby right now? Where do they go?"
Yeah, no, I do want people to know that our website is aidtrain.co, C-O.
Okay.
Go to CO.
Go, yeah, well, all the good .coms are taken.
We
so
like
if anyone,
CO. We
Yeah,
like
we like
CO.
CO.
Go
Company.
CO. Go
all right,
CO.
aidtrain.co. All right.
Exactly.
Thank you both for all the work you do around the world.
Sure.
And thank you, Emil, for having
Thanks,
us.
Emil, for the
Absolutely.
opportunity.